It was a day that started like any other for Alexander Grant, the tall, impeccably dressed millionaire CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, the kind of man whose tailored suits seemed to command attention before he even spoke, whose name was synonymous with success and wealth. Yet the story I'm about to tell you would not be about the power of his bank account or the respect he commanded in corporate boardrooms. It would be about the moment a tiny, unexpected voice in the back seat of his luxury car turned his world inside out and forced him to confront truths about himself, about America, and about a little girl whose courage would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew. On that warm Thursday afternoon, Alexander had just stepped out of a high-rise in downtown Chicago, the kind of building with revolving glass doors and a marble lobby where time felt slower because everyone moved with purpose, clutching briefcases and designer coffee cups. And in his hand he carried the weight of victory, signed contracts for a multi-million-dollar deal that would cement his company's place in the market. His assistant Olivia trailed behind him, tapping notes into her tablet, while his driver Paul, a man who'd been with him for over a decade, stood waiting beside the sleek black Bentley engine, purring rear door open, polished exterior, reflecting the chaotic dance of the city. Alexander had taken this walk hundreds of times, always sliding into the back seat with the casual ease of a man who owned the road he drove on. But today, as his polished leather shoes touched the curb, something was different. Sitting in the far corner of the back seat was a little black girl, no older than 7, with big, searching eyes, skin like polished mahogany, and a faded yellow dress that hung loose around her thin frame. In her arms, she held a worn-out stuffed bunny, its fur matted, ears drooping, the kind of toy that had been loved so fiercely it carried years of stories in its seams. Before Alexander could process the strangeness of her being there, before he could ask who she was or why she was in his car, she looked him square in the eye, her small jaw set, and said in a firm, almost commanding tone, "Shut up." The words hit him like a splash of cold water. Alexander was not used to being told to shut up, certainly not by strangers, and definitely not by children. In his world, people hung on his every word, carefully waiting for him to finish before speaking. The audacity startled him, but it wasn't anger he felt. It was curiosity. There was something about the way she said it, not disrespectful, not bratty, but urgent, as if silence was somehow the only thing that could keep them safe. Her tiny hands clutched the bunny so tightly, the stitches at its neck strained, and her wide eyes darted toward the street. Alexander followed her gaze and caught sight of 2 men across the road, tall, broad, wearing hoodies despite the summer heat, standing perfectly still, their eyes locked on the Bentley with an intensity that sent a ripple of unease through him. "Sir," Paul murmured from the front seat, his voice low but edged with tension, "maybe we should get moving." And that's when Alexander understood. This wasn't random. This little girl hadn't just wandered into his car. Something was happening, and whatever it was, those men outside were part of it. Without another word, Paul pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic. Alexander turned back to the girl, keeping his voice steady. "Why should I shut up?" he asked. Her answer came in a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the engine. "Because if you talk, they'll find us." Her voice trembled, but her eyes never left the window. Alexander didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't press her, instead watching the city blur past as they wound their way through busy streets. The men in hoodies were gone now, but the unease lingered, thick as the summer air. Minutes passed before she spoke again, this time with words that puzzled him even more. "You look like him, but you're not him. That's why I told you to be quiet." Him. The way she said it sent a chill up his spine. There was a story here, one he wasn't yet invited into. When they finally pulled into the underground garage beneath his building, Paul shut off the engine, but Alexander didn't move. He turned to the girl, still holding that bunny like a lifeline. "You're safe here," he told her. She shook her head slowly. "Nobody's safe when they see you as something you're not." And then, in a voice so soft he almost missed it, she added, "They don't like people who look like me. Or people who look like you if they think you're him." Her words dug under his skin in a way no business negotiation ever could. He didn't understand it all yet, but one thing was clear. This little girl had been running from something, and in her mind it was tied to race, to identity, to a danger that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with how the world saw her. In the days that followed, Alexander learned her name, Maya, and the truth behind her fear. She had been living with her grandmother in a rough part of town, a neighborhood Alexander only ever saw through tinted windows as his car sped by. Her grandmother cleaned offices at night and taught Maya to always speak up if something felt wrong. But a week earlier, Maya had seen something she wasn't supposed to. Two men harassing a black delivery driver, shouting slurs, shoving him against his truck. She'd yelled for them to stop, and they had turned on her instead, their voices dripping with hatred. The driver had managed to get away, but the men had followed her home, threatening to teach her a lesson. Her grandmother had told her to stay indoors, but the threats had grown worse. On the day she met Alexander, she had been walking back from a corner store when she spotted them again. Panicked, she ducked into the first open car she saw, the Bentley, never imagining that the man she'd meet inside would be anyone important. But here they were, thrown together by pure chance, though Alexander would later come to see it as fate. The more he learned about Maya, the more something inside him shifted. He had built a life so insulated from the realities of racism that he could pretend it didn't exist in his world. But listening to Maya, seeing the fear in her eyes and realizing that the color of her skin could put her in danger before she even spoke, it cracked something open in him. In the weeks that followed, Alexander used his resources to protect Maya and her grandmother, but he also began using his platform in ways he never had before, speaking out about systemic racism, funding programs for underprivileged communities, and making sure stories like Maya's weren't ignored. And yet what stayed with him the most wasn't the speeches or the headlines. It was the memory of that first moment, stepping into his car and hearing a little girl tell him to shut up. Not out of rudeness, but out of an instinct to survive in a world that too often judged before it listened. And maybe, Alexander thought, that was the lesson he was meant to carry, that sometimes the most important thing a person like him could do was stop talking, listen, and let someone else's truth fill the silence.